After a bite on her thigh, the Apache neighbor pleaded, "Rancher, hurry, get the poison out." The morning sun rose slowly over the vast stretches of the ranch, spilling golden light across the fields and grazing cattle. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fresh earth and the distant aroma of wildflowers that had survived the long winter. On this quiet ranch, life moved at its own pace, dictated by the rhythm of nature and the routine of the land. Every fence line, every patch of soil, and every animal had a story. The rancher had spent decades here, learning the way the land spoke, understanding its moods, and respecting its quiet authority. He knew when a storm was coming, when a herd was restless, and even when a snake had passed through a certain part of the land. The rancher himself was a man shaped by the land. Weathered hands, tanned from years under the sun, carried the marks of hard work. His boots had worn paths across every field, and his eyes, sharp and attentive, could spot the smallest movement among the grass. Despite the hard labor, there was a certain peace in his life, a sense of order that only came from working closely with the earth and the animals. On this particular morning, the rancher was busy repairing a fence that had been damaged by the night's wind. Each plank he nailed into place was done with careful precision, his mind partly focused on the task and partly wandering to thoughts of the day ahead. He had a routine, but he always appreciated moments when life offered a pause. The sun was rising higher now, and with it, the world seemed to awaken with gentle whispers of life. Birds began their songs, insects moved busily across the ground, and the occasional rustle in the bushes hinted at hidden life observing the ranch silently. Not far from the rancher's homestead lived his Apache neighbor. She was a woman known for her strength, knowledge of the land, and calm presence. Her understanding of wildlife and natural remedies was extraordinary, passed down through generations. She was not only a neighbor but a friend, someone who had shared quiet conversations over fences, helped with chores in moments of need, and offered guidance when the rancher faced a problem he could not solve alone. Their friendship had grown over the years, built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding of living in harmony with the land. That morning, the Apache neighbor was already moving through the fields, checking on the horses near the creek. She moved with a quiet grace, careful and deliberate, her eyes scanning the ground for any signs of danger or distress. She knew the land well, the hidden burrows where snakes might lie, the tracks of animals that could signal changes in the weather, and the plants that could be used for healing minor injuries. Even in her calm demeanor, there was an alertness, a readiness to respond to whatever the day might bring. As the rancher finished securing the last section of the fence, he wiped the sweat from his brow and looked around the property. He always appreciated these early hours when the world seemed to hold its breath, when nothing but the sounds of nature filled the air. It was a time to reflect, to prepare for the day, and to feel connected to the land that had been his home for so long. He glanced toward the creek and noticed the Apache neighbor tending to the horses, her presence a comforting reminder of the human connection amidst the solitude of ranch life. The day began like any other, with a sense of calm and predictability. The rancher and his neighbor shared a nod from across the field, a simple acknowledgement that carried years of friendship and mutual understanding. They both knew the value of these quiet moments where nothing dramatic occurred, but everything was felt deeply. The warmth of the sun, the gentle breeze, the chorus of wildlife, and the shared satisfaction of hard work completed. Yet even in such tranquility, there were signs of the unpredictable nature of life on the ranch. A small snake had been spotted near the barn earlier, slithering silently along the wooden beams. The rancher had noted its presence with cautious respect, aware of the danger it could pose. His neighbor had noticed too, and they exchanged a quiet understanding, a shared knowledge that the land could be as dangerous as it was beautiful. Such encounters were part of life here, a reminder that the peaceful moments were often intertwined with subtle risks. The rancher took a moment to rest, sitting on the edge of the fence and letting his eyes travel across the horizon. He thought of the cattle grazing, the horses moving gracefully near the creek, and the small patches of wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Each element of the ranch held meaning and required care. Life here demanded attention, patience, and respect. He had learned this over years of observing, working, and surviving in this environment. Meanwhile, the Apache neighbor moved closer, carrying a small basket filled with tools and supplies she intended to use to mend the horses' harnesses. Her presence was steadying, a silent companion in the vastness of the fields. She greeted the rancher warmly, her voice calm yet strong, a reminder that even in the open, untamed landscape, human connection provided comfort and support. They spoke briefly about the tasks for the day, sharing observations about the animals and the weather. Every conversation was grounded in practicality, but it also carried a warmth born from years of mutual reliance. As they worked separately yet side by side, a sense of harmony filled the morning. The rancher focused on maintaining the fences and preparing for the day ahead, while his neighbor attended to the horses, ensuring they were fed and their harnesses properly fitted. Each task required careful attention and respect for the creatures involved. Mistakes could be costly, but both handled their responsibilities with skill and care, reflecting a deep understanding of the delicate balance between humans, animals, and nature. In these hours, the rancher reflected on the solitude of ranch life, a solitude softened by the presence of trusted neighbors like the Apache woman. He knew that life on the land was not without danger, but it was also filled with moments of quiet beauty and connection. The rising sun illuminated not only the physical landscape, but also the intangible threads of trust, respect, and shared experience that bound the people living in this remote place. The morning continued with its gentle rhythm, but beneath the calm surface lay a subtle tension, a reminder that the ranch, like life itself, could shift suddenly from peace to peril. The rancher and his neighbor moved through their tasks with awareness, their instincts tuned to the land. Every movement, every glance, and every choice carried significance. Their shared history and knowledge allowed them to anticipate challenges, but nature's unpredictability remained a constant companion. By mid-morning, the rancher had completed his work on the fence and was beginning to prepare for other daily chores. He checked the livestock, ensured the water supply was sufficient, and looked for any signs of trouble. His neighbor had finished tending to the horses and was now walking back toward the ranch house, carrying a few tools. Their eyes met again, and without words, they shared a sense of readiness, an understanding that while the morning had been calm, life on the ranch required vigilance at all times. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the fields, the rancher and his neighbor paused briefly to drink water and rest. The heat of the day was approaching, and the land seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The rancher's thoughts wandered to the small snake seen earlier near the barn, a reminder of the hidden dangers that could appear without warning. The Apache neighbor, aware of the same, moved carefully, her attention fully on the surroundings. Even in these ordinary moments, there was a sense of narrative building, a quiet suspense, a preparation for the events that might unfold. The calm of the morning was comforting, but the rancher knew that life on the ranch was never entirely predictable. Every day held the possibility of challenges, accidents, or unexpected events. Their vigilance, experience, and mutual trust formed a foundation that allowed them to navigate this world safely. By late morning, the rancher had returned to the barn, checking supplies and ensuring the animals were secure. The Apache neighbor was nearby, organizing tools and preparing to move toward the creek again to inspect the water levels. Their movements were synchronized in a way that reflected years of shared experience. They did not need constant conversation. Their understanding was silent, built on observation and instinct. Yet, despite the serene appearance of the morning, the rancher could not shake a faint feeling of unease. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to make him glance at the tall grass along the fence line, the shaded areas near the barn, and the places where wildlife might hide. The land was beautiful, but it was also alive, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. The rancher and his neighbor both knew this truth, and it shaped the way they moved, worked, and thought. As the first part of the day drew to a close, the rancher and his neighbor paused once more, taking a moment to appreciate the quiet beauty around them. The sunlight shimmered off the creek, the cattle moved lazily across the fields, and birds continued their songs. It was a reminder of why they endured the hard work, the solitude, and the risks. The ranch was more than land. It was a life, a challenge, and a teacher. Little did they know that the calm of the morning was about to change. Hidden dangers were moving closer, unseen yet present, and the ordinary tasks of the ranch would soon give way to an extraordinary test of courage, knowledge, and survival. But for now, the rancher and his Apache neighbor were unaware, enjoying the simple rhythm of their lives, the shared trust that allowed them to feel safe, and the quiet majesty of the land they called home. The morning had begun with calm and routine, but the ranch, like the land itself, was unpredictable. The rancher had just returned from checking the cattle near the far fields, and his Apache neighbor was inspecting the creek's edge, where the horses liked to drink. The day seemed ordinary, yet nature has a way of hiding danger in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to remind humans that even familiarity cannot erase caution. The Apache neighbor moved carefully along the creek, her eyes scanning the water and the surrounding grass. She had learned long ago to notice small details: a leaf rustling too sharply in the wind, the faint mark of an animal's trail, or the subtle curve of a snake coiled in the shade. Her senses were finely tuned to the land, and though the morning had been calm, she knew that quiet could sometimes be deceptive. The creek's gentle gurgle and the occasional splash of a fish were comforting, but they did not erase the need for vigilance. Nearby, the rancher was finishing a quick inspection of the cattle pens. The livestock were calm, moving slowly through the fields, their low murmurs blending with the sounds of nature. The rancher's attention was split between the animals and the surrounding land. He noticed the small snake earlier near the barn, and though it had moved away, he knew the terrain could harbor more dangers. He had learned that time and attention were essential. Every glance, every careful step could prevent accidents. The Apache neighbor called softly to the rancher, a signal that she had noticed something unusual near the tall grass. He turned his head and saw her gesture subtly toward a patch of land where shadows moved in a strange, serpentine pattern. His instincts immediately heightened. "Could be another snake," he muttered under his breath. They both knew that while most snakes avoided humans, a sudden encounter could be dangerous. The rancher moved closer carefully, his hands empty and ready to react if necessary. Without warning, a sudden movement in the grass caught both of them off guard. A snake, quick and unexpected, slithered across the ground, startling the Apache neighbor. She jumped slightly, her hand instinctively rising to protect herself. But before either of them could react fully, the snake struck with precision and speed, biting her on the thigh. The sharp sting immediately caused her to cry out. Pain shot through her leg and she stumbled back, trying to steady herself against a nearby tree. The rancher was instantly at her side. His heart pounded as he saw the bite, his mind racing with the knowledge of what could happen. He had seen enough encounters with wildlife to understand the danger of venomous snakes. His neighbor, though strong and resilient, was vulnerable in this moment. "Rancher, hurry," she gasped, her voice strained but commanding. "Get the poison out." Panic threatened to rise, but the rancher forced himself to stay calm. He had learned that fear could make situations worse. He carefully examined the bite, noting the small puncture marks, the swelling beginning to appear, and the pale tension in her skin. He remembered the lessons she had taught him over the years, the importance of staying calm, slowing the spread of venom, and acting quickly but carefully. His hands moved with purpose, guided by years of shared knowledge. "Stay with me," he said firmly. His voice was steady, even as he felt his own heart racing. He knew that every second mattered, and that hesitation could make the situation worse. The Apache neighbor gritted her teeth against the pain, her trust in him evident even in the moment of fear. She had faced dangers before, but this was different. Her survival now depended not just on her own knowledge, but on the quick thinking and actions of someone else. The rancher began immediate first aid, following the traditional methods they both knew. He pressed gently around the bite to slow the venom, making sure not to worsen the injury. He checked her pulse, noting it was rapid but steady, a sign that her body was reacting but not yet overwhelmed. The heat of the sun made the moment feel heavier, the sweltering warmth mingling with the tension of urgency. Every movement, every action had to be precise. She winced but instructed him calmly, even through the pain. "Pressure, tight, keep it slow," she said, demonstrating her knowledge under stress. It was a harsh reminder of how dangerous life on the ranch could become in an instant, yet her clarity in the moment helped guide him. He followed her directions, their combined knowledge and trust turning a potentially fatal encounter into a race they could face together. The rancher knew that time was critical. He had to think clearly, act decisively, and avoid panic. He retrieved a small, clean blade from his pocket, intending to create a controlled opening to help draw out the venom, an old method that had been taught in emergencies when immediate medical help was not available. He worked quickly, carefully, and with respect for her body and her safety, aware that haste could lead to mistakes. She remained steady, breathing slowly despite the sharp pain, encouraging him with nods and quiet words. While he worked, he could see her eyes scanning the surroundings, always aware of the land. Even injured, she maintained a level of alertness, a reflection of her resilience and deep understanding of the environment. She whispered advice when needed, and he listened intently. Their combined focus became almost meditative, a synchronized effort of trust, knowledge, and survival instinct. The rancher applied a clean cloth to the wound to absorb the venom. He alternated between pressure and slow movements to help limit the poison's spread. Every second felt long, heavy with tension, as he watched the swelling and the subtle changes in her breathing. His hands worked tirelessly, guided by care and urgency. The sun climbed higher, but the world around them faded into the background. There was only the fight against the venom and the desperate need to save his neighbor's life. Through the pain, she offered him reassurance. "You're doing fine, don't stop. Keep going," she said, her voice a mix of trust and determination. Even in her vulnerable state, she remained focused, helping him maintain clarity in a moment that could easily have turned to panic. Her resilience inspired him, grounding him in the midst of chaos. The rancher then decided they needed to move toward the ranch house, where supplies and a phone for medical help were available. He supported her carefully, steadying her as she tried to take steps. Every movement was deliberate, cautious, and measured to avoid further strain or spread of venom. The journey, though short in distance, felt much longer under the circumstances. Each step carried weight, both physically and emotionally, as they navigated the fields with care. As they moved, the rancher could feel the tension building. The bite was more serious than they had hoped, and he knew they needed to act quickly. He scanned the land around them for any further danger, remembering the snake he had seen earlier. Nature was beautiful but unpredictable, and in these critical moments, even familiar surroundings could become treacherous. His senses were heightened, every sound amplified, every movement noticed. The Apache neighbor tried to remain calm, breathing slowly and controlling the panic she felt inside. She trusted the rancher with her life, and his actions demonstrated the depth of that trust. "Almost there, keep going," she encouraged, her voice strained but firm. It was a partnership born of experience and respect, a bond that allowed them to face the danger together rather than alone. Finally, they reached a shaded area near the ranch house, where the rancher could tend to her with more control and better tools. He laid her gently on a clean cloth, continuing the first aid with steady hands. He kept talking to her, keeping her conscious, focused, and aware, knowing that mental clarity was just as important as physical care in slowing the venom's effects. Minutes passed, heavy and tense, but their cooperation and determination made a difference. The swelling was controlled, the bite managed, and her spirits kept steady by his careful guidance. The rancher reflected on the fragility of life, the speed with which danger could appear, and the resilience required to overcome it. He understood the bond between humans and nature, one that demanded respect, vigilance, and courage. Though the incident had caused fear and pain, it also revealed strength and trust that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. They had faced a sudden threat together, relying on knowledge, instincts, and their shared history. The rancher's actions were decisive, the Apache neighbor's calm and courage inspiring, and together they had transformed a dangerous moment into a test of survival and mutual reliance. By late morning, the immediate threat had been managed, but both knew the situation was not fully over. Medical attention would still be necessary to ensure full recovery. Yet in this moment, the rancher and his neighbor had faced the crisis head-on, demonstrating resilience, knowledge, and the power of trust. The incident would leave a lasting mark, a reminder of the unpredictable challenges of life on the ranch and the courage required to face them. They rested in the shade, catching their breath and silently acknowledging the ordeal they had endured. The sun continued its climb, the world around them unchanged yet different, touched by the intensity of what had just occurred. Both knew that life on the ranch demanded vigilance, care, and respect, not just for the land, but for the creatures and forces that shared it. They had survived the bite together, and the experience strengthened the bond that had long existed between them. The rancher had managed to stabilize his Apache neighbor after the snake bite, but he knew that the danger was far from over. Even though he had slowed the venom with careful first aid, he understood that immediate professional medical help was essential. The venom could still spread quickly, and any delay could make the situation far more dangerous. He looked around the ranch, noting the distance to the house, the uneven ground, and the potential obstacles along the way. Every step now mattered. The Apache neighbor, despite her injury, remained calm but alert. She gritted her teeth against the sharp pain in her thigh, knowing that panic would only make matters worse. "Rancher, hurry. We have to get moving," she said, her voice strained but steady. Her trust in him was unwavering, and that trust gave him the strength to focus, to plan, and to act decisively. He nodded silently, aware that her life depended on his ability to act quickly and carefully. The first challenge was navigating the rough terrain. The ranch had uneven fields, patches of thick grass, and scattered rocks. Each step could trigger pain or worsen the injury. The rancher decided to support her by holding her under the arms, letting her weight rest partially on him. He moved slowly and deliberately, making sure each step was firm. "Take it slow, don't rush," he reminded her, his eyes scanning the ground ahead. She nodded, biting her lip and focusing on her breathing. As they moved toward the ranch house, the rancher's mind raced through the steps he would need to take once they arrived. He had to keep the wound clean, continue slowing the venom, and contact medical professionals. He also considered natural remedies that could complement first aid, but only as a temporary measure until proper help could arrive. Every thought was precise, practical, and aimed at survival. The sun climbed higher, and the heat became heavier, pressing down on them as they moved. Sweat dripped from the rancher's brow, and he could feel the strain in his muscles as he carried her. He was acutely aware of every detail. The uneven ground, the small rocks that could trip him, the patches of tall grass that could hide another snake, even the sudden gusts of wind that might catch them off guard. Nature, though beautiful, was unpredictable, and he respected it fully in this moment. The Apache neighbor remained aware, even through the pain. She watched the land, noting the small movements of wildlife and the shadows cast by the sun. "Careful, there's a rock ahead," she warned, pointing with her free hand. The rancher adjusted his step and avoided the obstacle, silently grateful for her guidance. Even in her injured state, her presence was invaluable. Together, they navigated the dangers of the field, their teamwork a lifeline in the face of uncertainty. As they neared the edge of the main field, the rancher realized they were not as close to the house as he had hoped. The journey would take longer than anticipated, and time was critical. He adjusted his strategy, lowering her slightly to let her legs touch the ground for support while he guided her forward. Every movement was calculated, slow, and careful. The pain in her thigh flared, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving, driven by determination and the understanding that her survival depended on reaching help. Along the way, they encountered small challenges: a broken fence to step over, a patch of mud from the morning dew, and a narrow path lined with thorny bushes. Each obstacle demanded caution and creativity. The rancher helped her over the fence, avoided the mud by stepping on higher ground, and guided her carefully through the thorny path. Despite the urgency, he refused to rush, knowing that one wrong step could worsen the bite or cause a new injury. His focus was unwavering, his hands steady, and his voice calm. As they moved, the rancher reflected on the moments leading up to the bite. He remembered the morning's calm, the peaceful routine, and the beauty of the land. The contrast between that serene beginning and the life-threatening moment they were now facing struck him deeply. Nature, he realized, was both a provider and a challenge. It offered beauty, sustenance, and companionship, but it also demanded respect and caution. Every day on the ranch was a lesson, and today's lesson was sharper than most. The Apache neighbor encouraged him, her words steady despite her exhaustion. "You're doing well, keep going, we'll make it," she said, her trust in him a source of strength for both. Her resilience, even under duress, reminded the rancher of the courage people can summon when faced with real danger. He responded with quiet determination, silently promising to get her to safety. The shared bond between them, forged over years of trust and mutual respect, was now the strongest lifeline they had. As they continued, the rancher noticed subtle signs that the venom was affecting her more: slight trembling, increased sweating, and faster breathing. He paused briefly to adjust his hold, ensuring she was stable and supported. "We're almost there, just a little further," he said, encouraging her while carefully monitoring her condition. Every detail mattered: the swelling, the pulse, the color of her skin, and he kept a careful watch, ready to act if the situation worsened. The rancher also knew that the journey would be physically demanding for him. Carrying her weight over uneven ground under the hot sun, and while remaining alert for any other dangers, required strength, endurance, and focus. He had faced long days of labor before, but this was different. This was not work, it was survival. His every movement, breath, and thought was dedicated to keeping her alive. He drew on his years of experience on the ranch, using muscles trained by hard work and reflexes honed by years of observing the land. Halfway to the ranch house, a sudden rustle in the tall grass made both of them freeze. A small rabbit darted across the path, harmless but enough to startle them. The rancher adjusted quickly, ensuring her stability and keeping his grip firm. Even in this tense moment, he allowed himself a silent smile at the reminder that life continues in its own rhythms, even when danger looms. It was a fleeting moment of levity, but it strengthened his resolve. The journey was not just physical, it was emotional. The rancher felt a surge of fear for his neighbor, empathy for her pain, and determination to see her safe. Every word he spoke, every action he took, was meant to convey calm and reassurance. He understood that panic could make things worse, and he used his presence to anchor her in the moment. They moved as a team, a partnership forged by trust, experience, and the urgency of survival. As they neared the ranch house, the rancher's focus sharpened. He knew that once they reached the house, they could access water, clean supplies, and the phone to call for professional help. He adjusted his pace carefully, balancing speed with safety, ensuring that the venom remained controlled and that no further injury occurred. The Apache neighbor, though exhausted, remained attentive, following his lead and providing guidance when necessary. Finally, they reached the small porch leading into the ranch house. The rancher gently helped her sit down on a chair, relieved that the most dangerous part of the journey was behind them. He quickly gathered a basin of water, clean cloths, and a few basic tools to continue first aid while he prepared to call for help. Every movement was deliberate, calm, and precise, ensuring that her safety remained the priority. They paused for a brief moment, catching their breath and assessing her condition. The rancher noted the swelling in her thigh, the color of her skin, and her pulse. He continued to apply pressure and kept the wound elevated slightly to slow the venom spread. The Apache neighbor, despite her pain, encouraged him. "You're doing well, just a little more," she said, her words steady and reassuring. Their trust and cooperation had carried them this far, and now they faced the final steps toward professional care. The rancher dialed the emergency number, speaking calmly and clearly to explain the situation. He gave precise details about the bite, her current condition, and their location on the ranch. The operator's voice was calm and reassuring, providing instructions while the rancher continued to monitor her condition. He followed every step carefully, balancing the need for speed with careful attention to her safety. While waiting for help to arrive, the rancher continued first aid, keeping her calm and focused. He reminded her to breathe slowly, to stay conscious, and to remain still. The tension in the room was heavy, but it was balanced by determination, trust, and the knowledge that they had acted wisely and quickly. Each moment was critical, yet their teamwork, preparation, and resilience allowed them to face it together. Outside, the ranch remained quiet, the sun climbing higher and casting long shadows across the fields. Birds sang, and the wind moved gently through the trees, a reminder that life continued even amidst danger. The rancher reflected on the events of the morning, the sudden bite, the swift response, and the trust that had guided their actions. He understood that survival depended not just on skill, but on calmness, observation, and cooperation. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually help was on the way. The rancher continued to monitor her, applying pressure and keeping her comfortable. They had faced a real test of courage, trust, and quick thinking, and they were stronger for it. The journey, though exhausting and terrifying, had shown the depth of their bond, their resilience, and the power of careful, deliberate action in the face of life-threatening danger. The rancher's heart pounded as he monitored his Apache neighbor's condition. The venom had been slowed, but the danger was still very real. Every minute mattered. He knew that despite his careful first aid, the poison could spread quickly, affecting her muscles and vital organs. The rancher understood that the next steps could be the difference between life and serious harm. His hands, steady but tense, adjusted the pressure on the wound, while his mind raced through the possibilities. She sat on the porch, her breathing shallow and measured, her eyes fixed on the rancher. Pain radiated from her thigh, yet she maintained focus. "Rancher, we must act fast. Don't hesitate," she said, her voice calm but urgent. Her trust in him was unwavering, and he drew strength from it. He knew that she relied on his knowledge and quick thinking. just as he relied on her guidance and wisdom in understanding the land and its hidden dangers. The rancher quickly realized that waiting for external help might not be enough. The emergency operator had given instructions, but given the remote location of the ranch, the response time could be longer than desired. He had to make a critical decision: rely solely on the distant help or combine their knowledge with immediate action to reduce the risk. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he remained calm, focused, and determined. "Rancher, you need to act," she urged, her hand trembling slightly as she indicated the bite. "Even a small delay can make it worse." He nodded silently, understanding the gravity of the moment. Time had become their enemy, and every careful, deliberate movement mattered. He assessed the situation: the bite, the swelling, her pulse, and her level of consciousness. The venom's effects were beginning to show more clearly, though she was still alert and able to respond. He decided to use a combination of first aid and careful extraction techniques, guided by her knowledge. The Apache neighbor instructed him with precision, her voice steady even as the pain throbbed. "Apply pressure, keep it slow, don't rush the incision," she said. Her guidance was invaluable. She knew the traditional methods, which could help limit the spread of venom until medical professionals arrived. The rancher followed her instructions meticulously, each movement deliberate and precise. He prepared the area carefully, ensuring that everything was as clean as possible. Water, cloths, and simple tools were arranged around them. He worked with methodical care, making sure the wound was properly exposed without causing additional harm. The Apache neighbor instructed him to keep the limb elevated slightly, reducing blood flow to slow the venom spread. Every adjustment required careful coordination, patience, and constant attention. The pain intensified for her as the rancher began to work, but she endured it with quiet strength. She focused on her breathing, keeping calm and alert. "You're doing well, steady hands slow," she encouraged him, demonstrating that courage in the face of pain could be as powerful as physical skill. Her resilience inspired him, reminding him of why he respected her so deeply and why he had to act with complete focus. The rancher carefully followed her directions, making a small, precise incision designed to help draw out the venom. He worked slowly, aware that rushing could cause more harm. He pressed the wound gently with clean cloths, watching for changes in swelling and color, and adjusted his technique as needed. The process required patience, precision, and courage. Every second was critical, and there was no room for error. As he worked, he remained aware of her mental state. Fear, pain, and panic could increase the effects of venom and complicate the situation. He kept talking to her, offering reassurance and encouragement. "You're strong, almost there, stay with me," he said, his voice calm and steady. She responded with nods and short words, trusting him completely and allowing him to focus without distraction. Their teamwork became a lifeline, each action synchronized to ensure safety and effectiveness. The rancher also had to remain aware of his surroundings. Nature, ever present, could become dangerous at any moment. The tall grass, hidden rocks, and uneven ground reminded him that even within the ranch's familiar boundaries, risk could appear without warning. He maintained a careful watch, ensuring that their focus on the wound did not allow other dangers to go unnoticed. Minutes felt like hours as he continued the process. The Apache neighbor winced at times, yet remained engaged, guiding him with knowledge and encouragement. Her breathing became slightly labored, but she fought to maintain control, knowing that her composure was crucial. The rancher adjusted his approach continuously, observing every detail, listening to her feedback, and responding to subtle changes in her condition. At one point, he paused briefly to allow her a moment of rest. "You're doing great, breathe slowly. We'll take it one step at a time," he said. She nodded, appreciating the care and attention. This pause allowed both of them to regain focus and strength before continuing. Even in moments of crisis, small breaks could make a significant difference in ensuring that no mistakes occurred. Once rested, he resumed the delicate process of controlling the venom. He applied gentle pressure, monitored swelling, and alternated techniques as needed. His hands worked with skill, patience, and unwavering attention. He was determined to protect her life, and every thought and action was centered on achieving that goal. The intensity of the moment required mental clarity and emotional control, both of which he maintained under pressure. Throughout the ordeal, the Apache neighbor demonstrated remarkable courage. Despite the sharp pain and increasing fatigue, she remained engaged, instructing him and maintaining awareness of her surroundings. Her resilience gave him strength, allowing him to act decisively without hesitation. Their mutual trust and cooperation became the foundation for survival, each relying on the other to navigate this critical moment. As the minutes passed, the rancher noticed signs of improvement. The swelling was more controlled and her breathing steadied slightly. These small victories reinforced his determination. He continued applying pressure and monitoring the wound, careful not to let the momentary progress lull him into complacency. Every action, no matter how small, could influence the outcome. The rancher also prepared for the next step, moving her to a location where professional medical care could reach them more easily. He knew that while first aid was essential, expert treatment was critical for full recovery. He gently supported her as they planned their movement, ensuring that she was as comfortable as possible while keeping the limb stable. Their careful coordination reflected the depth of trust and experience between them. Outside, the ranch remained quiet, the wind moving gently through the trees, birds singing intermittently. Despite the serenity of the surroundings, the urgency of their situation was never far from their minds. The rancher reflected on the morning's events, the sudden bite, the swift response, and the teamwork that had turned a potentially fatal encounter into a controlled, manageable crisis. He understood that courage, knowledge, and trust had been the keys to navigating this challenge. By mid-afternoon, the rancher felt confident that they had controlled the immediate danger. The venom had been slowed, and the wound managed carefully. The Apache neighbor, though tired and still in pain, had maintained consciousness and alertness, a testament to her strength and resilience. Together, they had faced a true test of courage, skill, and cooperation. The rancher prepared for the final step, moving her safely to receive medical attention. He gathered supplies, ensuring everything was clean, accessible, and ready for the journey. He adjusted his grip and explained the plan, making sure she understood each movement. "We're almost there. One careful step at a time," he said, his voice steady, calm, and reassuring. She nodded, trusting him completely, and readied herself for the final push toward safety. Even as they prepared to move, the rancher remained vigilant. Every step, every shift of weight, and every movement could influence the outcome. He monitored the wound, her vital signs, and her mental state, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but his focus never wavered. Survival required precision, patience, and courage, and he was determined to see it through. Finally, with careful coordination, they began the slow journey toward the ranch road where help could reach them. Each step was deliberate, measured, and cautious. The rancher's hands remained steady, his eyes focused, and his mind sharp. The Apache neighbor, though weary, followed his lead, her trust in him unwavering. Together, they moved through the familiar yet suddenly treacherous landscape, a testament to resilience, courage, and mutual reliance. The rancher carefully guided his Apache neighbor toward the ranch road, each step deliberate and slow. The danger from the snake bite was still present, but the immediate crisis had passed thanks to their combined effort and quick thinking. Despite the pain in her thigh, she remained alert and focused, leaning on him for support. They moved together through the familiar fields, now seen in a different light, their beauty tinged with the memory of danger, and their open space a reminder of how quickly life could change. The sun was high in the sky, casting harsh shadows across the landscape. The heat made the journey more challenging, but neither of them complained. The rancher's mind was entirely focused on her safety. He scanned the surroundings constantly, alert for any further obstacles or dangers. Every rock, every patch of uneven ground, every hidden burrow could present a risk. Nature, though calm at first glance, demanded respect, especially when vulnerability was involved. "Just a little further," he said, keeping his voice steady, a constant reassurance in the tense air. She nodded, her trust in him evident in her gaze. Even in her weakened state, she was aware of the delicate balance between patience and speed. Too fast and they could make a mistake, too slow and time might work against them. They continued step by step, their progress slow but steady. The rancher adjusted his hold to ease her discomfort, supporting her under the arms while keeping the wounded leg as stable as possible. Sweat dripped from both of them, and the effort weighed heavily on his muscles. Yet he remained determined, knowing that giving in to fatigue or panic could have serious consequences. His thoughts returned briefly to the earlier moments, the sudden strike of the snake, the immediate fear, and the way they had relied on knowledge, trust, and calm focus to manage the situation. Those memories fueled his resolve now. As they approached the main road leading off the ranch, the sound of approaching vehicles became faintly audible. Help was finally near. Relief surged in both of them, but the rancher maintained caution. They still had to move carefully to avoid any jostling that might aggravate the bite. He guided her onto a small, shaded patch of grass to wait for the vehicle, keeping her calm and the wound under observation. The Apache neighbor, though exhausted, managed a faint smile. "You've done well, we made it this far," she said, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. The rancher nodded, acknowledging the effort and courage she had shown throughout the ordeal. They had faced a life-threatening challenge together, and their bond had deepened in ways that words could barely capture. It was a shared experience that would linger in their memories, a testament to resilience and trust. The emergency responders arrived promptly, moving with practiced efficiency. They quickly assessed her condition, noting the swelling, the bite marks, and her vital signs. The rancher stepped back, allowing them to work while remaining nearby to provide details about the bite, the timing, and the first aid that had already been applied. His observations were precise and calm, reflecting his focus and understanding of the situation. The responders prepared to transport her to the nearest medical facility. She was carefully lifted onto a stretcher, her leg immobilized to prevent further injury. The rancher followed closely, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. "You're strong, just a little longer," he said. She nodded, her trust unwavering, and allowed herself to rely fully on their expertise. During the ride to the hospital, the rancher remained by her side, monitoring her condition and offering support. The Apache neighbor, though still in pain, maintained her composure, her breathing steady, and her eyes focused on the familiar presence of someone she trusted. The bond between them, strengthened by the crisis, gave both of them a sense of shared strength and calm amidst the stress. Once at the hospital, the medical team quickly took over. They assessed the bite, administered the necessary treatment, and monitored her condition closely. The rancher stayed in the waiting area, his hands restless but his mind focused on the process. Hours passed slowly, but eventually the nurse emerged with reassuring news. She would recover fully, thanks to the timely first aid and the quick response. Relief washed over him. The fear, tension, and exhaustion of the day began to fade, replaced by gratitude and reflection. He understood the fragility of life and the value of preparation, knowledge, and trust. The incident had been dangerous, but it had also revealed strengths in both of them. resilience, courage, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. When he finally saw her again, sitting upright and stable, their eyes met with unspoken understanding. They had faced a test of life and survived. She offered a small smile, her eyes reflecting relief, gratitude, and renewed strength. "We made it," she said softly. The rancher nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and connection. They had confronted a serious threat together, relied on each other completely, and emerged stronger for it. In the following days, recovery began slowly. She remained at the hospital for observation, and the rancher visited daily, bringing small comforts and supplies from the ranch. Their conversations were quiet but meaningful, reflecting on the events and the lessons learned. They spoke of nature's beauty, its hidden dangers, and the importance of vigilance and preparedness. The incident had changed their perspective, highlighting both the unpredictability of life and the strength found in trust and cooperation. Back at the ranch, life began to return to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the bite lingered. The rancher checked the fences, tended the animals, and walked the fields with a renewed sense of caution and respect for the land. Every shadow, every rustle, every hidden movement reminded him that vigilance was essential. Yet the experience also deepened his appreciation for the land and the creatures that shared it with him. Life on the ranch had always required patience, observation, and resilience, but now these qualities were more valuable than ever. The Apache neighbor eventually returned home, her strength slowly rebuilding. She moved carefully, aware of the lingering soreness in her leg, but her spirit remained unbroken. She shared stories of her observations during the ordeal, noting how the rancher's calm, decisive actions had made all the difference. They spoke of teamwork, courage, and the quiet power of mutual trust. Their shared experience had become a story not only of survival but of respect, for each other, for life, and for the land that shaped them both. Together they resumed their routines, now with a deeper sense of connection and understanding. Every task, whether feeding the livestock, repairing fences, or tending the fields, was approached with renewed awareness. They understood that danger could arise suddenly, but they also knew that preparation, calmness, and trust could overcome even the most threatening challenges. The bond between them had been tested, strengthened, and solidified in ways that could never be undone. As the weeks passed, the memory of the bite remained, but it no longer carried fear. Instead, it became a story of courage, resilience, and survival. They often reflected on the morning when danger had arrived unexpectedly, when trust and knowledge had been their lifeline, and when their quick thinking had prevented tragedy. The experience shaped their perspective on life, deepened their friendship, and left a lasting sense of respect for both the land and each other. The rancher sometimes walked through the fields alone, recalling the tense moments and the quiet triumph of survival. The Apache neighbor returned to her routines with renewed focus, aware that the land demanded respect and vigilance, but also provided beauty, sustenance, and purpose. Both carried the lessons of that day with them: the importance of calm under pressure, the value of teamwork, and the strength found in mutual trust. Though life returned to its usual rhythm, the experience left a lasting mark. The rancher and his Apache neighbor had faced a moment that could have ended in tragedy, yet they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected. Their story became a testament to courage, preparedness, and the quiet power of trust. It reminded them, and anyone who heard it, that even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary challenges can arise, and facing them with skill, calm, and cooperation can make all the difference. In the end, the rancher looked across the fields one warm evening, the sun casting long shadows over the land, and reflected on the journey. They had survived the bite, the fear, and the uncertainty. The Apache neighbor had endured pain with grace and strength. Together, they had turned a dangerous encounter into a story of survival, trust, and human resilience. The land remained vast and beautiful. The animals continued their quiet routines, and life, though fragile, went on. The incident became a quiet legend on the ranch, a reminder of the unpredictable challenges of life, the importance of vigilance, and the power of trust between people who respect each other and the world around them. And though the snake bite was an event neither would forget, it also became a symbol of their courage, determination, and the deep bond forged through shared experience.